Do you see a Liberal comeback, or is this a warning sign disguised as good news?
This is a warning sign for the Liberals. They've been touting polls that showed them with an 11-point lead. And, those were obviously Liberal polls.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Behind the Headlines. The viewership over the past few weeks have been incredible. So, if you want me to shut up and if you want to keep seeing this content, then please hit that like, that comment, and subscribe button across Apple, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Because the truth is, without you, there is no show. Let's get right to it. On today's show, Prime Minister Mark Carney has signed a deal with Danielle Smith to build a new pipeline to the West Coast. Then, the Liberal caucus seems to be fracturing. Stephen Guilbeault has resigned in protest, and the environmental wing of the party is in full revolt. Is this the beginning of the end for Liberal unity? And finally, Carney got the front page number that he wanted this week. Abacus now has the Liberals narrowly ahead, 41-40 over the Conservatives. So let's get after it. On segment one, let's start with the headline grabber. And that is, as I just mentioned, Mark Carney and Danielle Smith signed a piece of paper this week that promises a new bitumen pipeline to the West Coast. On the surface, it looks like a grand bargain. Ottawa relaxes emission rules, and Alberta finally gets its pipe dream. There are a number of reasons why this might never actually happen. And as you're about to hear, Ian and I both agree that this pipeline probably isn't getting built at all. And that's by design. So before we get to the political fireworks, we're going to look at whether this deal is even practical, whether it can even exist in the real world. Spoiler. It's not what you're thinking. So let's take a look at this clip of Pierre Poilievre during question period, and then we're going to talk about the practical implications of it.
In what year will construction begin on a new pipeline to the Pacific?
Honorable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the world is changing rapidly. The United States, the world's largest economy, is fundamentally reshaping all of its trade relationships, causing major disruption and upheaval for Canadians. It's time to transform our economy from one that is reliant on a single trading partner to one that is stronger, more self-sufficient.
What's he talking about?
Global shocks. To these ends, Canada and Alberta share the same ambitions. Diversify our export markets, make Canada an energy superpower, and build a stronger, cleaner, more independent, more competitive economy.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
All right, he can't tell us the year in which construction will begin. Can he tell us in what decade will construction begin on a new pipeline to the Pacific?
The Honorable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, today is a really important day because we are taking important steps forward on cooperative federalism. The Prime Minister has been clear, and we've always known.
Okay, that's enough of that. I can't bear to listen to that. Okay, Ian, so what's your reaction? What do you think about this pipeline? I think you got some comments more to do with the practicality about it and getting private sector into invest. What do you think?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that Pierre was right about the timing. First of all, under this deal, they're going to study it for 7 months. Then they're going to send it to Carney's Major Projects Committee for 2 years, and then maybe they'll have a decision to build it. And then once they start building, it will take 10 years to build it. So there's nothing here. There's nothing here that is immediate or will show results for a long time. And the second thing is that the government has said, Carney said when he did the signing with Smith, that the first thing he said was it doesn't have a private sector sponsor. Well, wait a minute. The Canada Pension Fund is only invested in 15% of projects in Canada. 54% are invested in the United States, and then the rest of the world, the rest. We could take some of that money from our pension fund and build the pipeline. And it's a good investment because the world needs oil. It's a great way to use our pension money and not to go begging to the Arabs to loan us money and then pay them interest, or they have ownership of it. Nonsense.
Are Canadians really supposed to buy this? I don't think that there is going to be much of a pipeline anywhere because, as you mentioned, BC has said that they don't want it unless it can be done without.
Let me make a comment right there, because Mr. Eby has been saying for years, no pipeline, no pipeline. Well, after he had a meeting with the minister from Ottawa this week, he said, I've discovered that if Ottawa wants to build this pipeline, there's nothing we can do to stop it. Wait a minute. You haven't read the Constitution of Canada and who's responsible for what? Now, that although that is a reality, will Carney have the cojones to actually force it through in BC? And the final thing there is that there's a blowback from the native folks in northern BC about tankers going up and down the coast. Well, wait a minute. Alaskan oil is going up and down the exact same route to California and has been for years. So what's the difference if you add a little bit of Canadian traffic?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think that the mainstream media has had it wrong on all the substance and on the politics. Liberal talking heads are calling this gutsy and transformative, and then asking if it's a risk for him. It's not a risk for him if Canadians keep believing Carney's bullshit. And that brings us back to this, question is, what did he actually sign? It sounds to me like it's worth less than a pinky promise, but it sounds like he can't get a real deal with the US or normalize relationships with Trump. And the other thing about, your points about the CPP are great, and I agree with them. And of course, there's no public sector proponent, because for the last decade, the Liberal Party of Canada has treated our resources, our country's greatest weapon, like they should be kept in the ground. And investment is fleeing from Canada because we're not a serious place to do business. And they're not just about to say, okay, they signed a piece of paper, a memorandum of understanding. What Carney really needs to do is he needs to be bold, is what he said, and he needs to ram the thing through. Take into account, obviously, BC and the native nations in that area. But at the end of the day, we got to get this done for the country.
Well, there is an alternative to the Northern Pipeline. They can double the pipeline going into Vancouver, which is already exporting millions of barrels of oil out of the port of Vancouver, and no objections from natives or anybody.
But so that's the practicality of the so-called pipeline. It probably sounds more like a pipe dream, no pun intended. Lots of headlines.
Nice smoking.
Yeah, I don't know what they're smoking, but I want what they're smoking. That's for sure. There's lots of headlines. There's almost no chance that it ever gets built, but it works beautiful for Carney as theater. But we're going to pivot politically.
Not necessarily on the politics, because I think he's going to have some political fallout from his own party.
Right. And we did see that this week, which is where we're pivoting to now. We're going to talk about Stephen Guilbeault, the former environment minister who built much of the Liberals' green agenda, has now quit over this deal. And there are rumors out of Ottawa saying that there are more in the Liberal caucus that could be leaving, and that they're split between the true climate believers and, the win Alberta over at any cost crowd. And this is where the MOU stops being about bitumen and tankers and starts being more about whether Carney can hold his own team together. So we're going to watch this clip from Brian Lilly of the Toronto Sun. He's going to talk about more broadly the rumored cabinet resignations that we've been talking about on this show.
The House rises for December. We're going to see a cabinet shuffle towards the end of December after the House rises, week of the 15th, most likely. We're going to see changes brought in. People drop, like Lena Diab at immigration. Gary Ndesangri shuffled out of public safety, hopefully to something he can handle. But we're also going to see MPs like potentially Melanie Joly Bill Blair, he'll be shuffled off to London and become Canada's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. Jonathan Wilkinson will become our ambassador to the European Union in Brussels. Who knows what happens with Guilbeault? Maybe he just leaves. Don't go away, Mad Stephen, just go away. And so then there will be a whack of by-elections for early in the new year, while the Conservatives are still concerned with Pierre Poilievre's leadership review and the NDP are leaderless. All of this as Mark Carney tries to build his own team and put his own stamp on the Liberal Party. At the same time, he still has those caucus fractures and could be losing some more.
Okay, Ian. So that was Brian Lilley of the Toronto Sun. What's your reaction?
He's absolutely right. First, it's very unusual to have a cabinet minister resign from cabinet. The last major time it ever happened was when John Turner resigned from Papa Trudeau's cabinet over the overspending. And then Turner came back later and became leader of the party. You know, this is big. Not only Guilbeault as a main spokesman for the environment out of Quebec, where most people in Quebec don't want a pipeline. And the Bloc also has been very strongly against the pipeline. So what's going to happen is when the election is called next year, they're going to have seats that are in jeopardy in Quebec to the Bloc, not to the NDP, but they could have 5 to 10 seats that are up for grabs by the Bloc because of Quebec's opposition to the pipeline. And then you go to British Columbia. The Liberals currently have 20 seats. Well, with the Guilbeault resignation, at least 10 of those seats will be up for grabs for the NDP, who also oppose the pipeline in British Columbia. So the political fallout has only just begun. Now, if Mr. Lilley is kind of projecting that there will be cabinet shuffle and then a bunch of by-elections in the spring, those are mainly safe Liberal seats, the people who are getting appointments. So it's not a big deal. But when the writs go down next fall or sooner, then you can be sure that the two opposition parties will make hay over the pipeline issue in Quebec and in British Columbia.
Yeah, totally agree. Can't disagree with anything that you just said. The only thing that I would really add is the reason why we keep talking about this is not to drag it on and on and on, but because we're setting up our predictions and setting up what we think is going to happen in the next year. And when we move into the next year, we're either going to be really, really right or we're either going to be really, really wrong. I think
we haven't been wrong yet.
Right. We haven't been wrong yet. No, that's true. But with Stephen Guilbeault, very happy to see him go. I hope the door doesn't hit him on the way out. And the way I see it is like, he may not be the worst cabinet minister ever, but like, he better hope that he doesn't outlive Melanie Joly, because those are two of the worst cabinet ministers in the history of this country.
It's one question. Yeah, he's a former Greenpeace nut bar. And I have more to say about the Greenpeace later.
Right. And, here's what really matters now. It's one thing to quit cabinet. The real question is, does he still vote with the government on the big stuff? Does he even have time to? Does he break ranks? My bet is that I don't think he'll be that bold. Where he is bold, though, is in the anti-pipeline, keep it in the ground pipes of the province of Quebec, where now he's a hero. I'll be watching in 2026 to see if he jumps to provincial politics,
or
runs for
Bloc.
the PQ, or to the Bloc. Maybe that's a possibility. And taking positions that attack the same Liberal government that he used to sit in. But just talking about like generally the rest of the Liberal cast that's shifting. Melanie Joly, she may stay, she may not. I don't know. I tend to lean in the direction of Brian Lilley. Nate Erskine-Smith, he clearly wants to be premier. Chrystia Freeland, the worst finance minister in history, is heading for the exit. So yeah, it is a big story because it's not just one minister quitting or one person crossing the floor. It's a party in transition, and Guilbeault's resignation is the first tremor. Do you have anything else to add?
Compare that to the 2 weeks of vicious rumors about Pierre's caucus. Turns out that one guy quit and became a traitor and went to the Liberals, and another guy was unhappy for different reasons and decided he's going to not run again. Yes, a
Yeah.
lot different from the wholesale changes that are going to be happening in the Liberal Party. It's fascinating that the Liberal talking heads and spin doctors started attacking Pierre, knowing that they were going to have trouble in their own caucus.
Yeah, it's all bullshit. But anyways, let's move on. We're going to talk about our third and our final topic. And I mean, it depends on how you look at this, but it seems like Carney may have got the front page number that he wanted. Abacus data now has the Liberals narrowly ahead, 41 to 40 over the Conservatives. But because this is called Behind the Headlines, we have to see what's really happening under this headline. Pierre Poilievre is basically tied in vote intention after 2.5 years of sustained attacks, and his negatives have flattened instead of imploding, even as Carney's pipe dream gamble and the Trump trade war dominates the news. And when you move from who would you vote for to who do you trust on the issues that actually matter, the picture gets even more dangerous for the Liberals. Conservatives still lead on the cost of living and the overall economy, and they dominate on crime and immigration, while Liberals pile up their big margins on healthcare, climate, and anxiety about the Trump administration. So, Ian, as we just walked the audience through these three graphics today, the impressions chart, the top line ballot, the issue by issue breakdown, I'm going to ask you one question. Do you see a Liberal comeback, or is this a warning sign disguised as good news?
This is a warning sign for the Liberals. They've been touting polls that showed them with an 11-point lead. And, those were obviously Liberal polls. But here we have a well-respected national pollster, Abacus, who has them in a virtual tie. In polling, when most polls have a 3% margin one way or the other, well, when it's 41 to 40, that's a tie. And that's not what they expected. But the reason is it came shortly after Mr. Carney said, who cares about Trump? Mr. Elbows Up became Mr. Elbows Down in a moment. And Canadians, there's been talk about that all over the media, and Canadians are pissed off. They were lied to by Mr. Elbows Up.
Buried in these numbers, the Trump administration is basically the only big issue where the Liberals can crush the Conservatives anymore. On the stuff that's happening inside of our country, the cost of living, the economy, crime, immigration, everything that has overhung the budget, as we talked about in our first episode and second episode and third episode and fourth episode, Pierre is tied or ahead. So as Trump fades, the Liberals lose their strongest card. Pierre gets a real opening in 2026. And, that's why I think that this pipeline is designed to fail, because Carney needs to look like he's standing up to the U.S. and fixing the economy without actually angering BC and the environmental zealots who could bolt back to the NDP and split that side of the vote in a way that keeps the Liberals alive. I don't know. Do you have anything else to add to that? I just think that the way we set it up is pretty perfect. The top line numbers are good for Carney, but what's actually happening behind the numbers is bad news, I would say.
We're going to see if this is a trend when the next few polls come out.
Yeah. Well, it's been great. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in for another episode. So with that, Ian and I are going to sign off, and we'll see you next week.